Okay, so today we're going to cover Ezra. So we only have few books left. Uh, we have Ezra, Haggai, Zechariah, Esther, and Nehemiah and Malachi, and all these books are very short, and I think we'll be able to actually, finish Old Testament very soon. So I'm very excited that we're just running towards the end of the Old Testament. But today we're going to cover Ezra. Just to give you some background on Ezra, we most likely jump back and forth between the multiple books as we cover Ezra, because Ezra, you have to look at multiple books. Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, and Zechariah, those four books are all connected. So you have to read it together to understand the big picture of what's happening in this book. In order for us to really understand these four books and what's happening, obviously we need to have a little bit of a background as to how the history goes. And I think I did explain most of the stuff while I was going over the book of Daniel. I covered the history of starting from the Persia, and I talked about each different kings and what happens and how they came to be kings, and the fall of Lydia and fall of Neo-Babylonians empires and so forth. So I'm just, before I actually move forward, I just want to ask whether you guys remember this historical fact that I went over when I was going over the book of Daniel. Do you guys remember the historical fact that I explained in the past, or do I have to go over all that again? I even actually explained to you about the movie, The Legend of Tomiris. I actually asked you guys to kind of watch that movies to really see how the Cyrus the Great was killed by the Tomiris in the war between the Persian and Scythians. So I don't know if you guys just kind of remember. If not, if you guys need to just kind of review it again, I can go over it again. If you really have the decent amount of historical factor which I went over before, we can just kind of skip it. So you tell me and how you guys want to go over. So I could do it either way. So I need a little bit of a consensus that, yeah, I got it and I understood the historical fact and we can move on. Or, oh, yeah, I think I heard about it, but I don't remember. I just want to go over it again. I can go over it again. So you tell me.
Is that with the animals?
Animals?
Yeah, the lion, Babylonian Empire.
Yeah, when I was going over the book of the Daniel, I just explained a whole historical fact how Cyrus the Great became a king and their sons, and I even kind of brief touched on the Alexander and stuff. We're not getting to the Alexander era, but at least we need to understand the fall of Babylonians and how the Persian really just took over the Middle East area. So because it is all connected to the Ezra.
Was it recorded?
Everything is recorded in the book of Daniel. Yeah, you can actually listen to it if you wanted it in the recording. If you actually want to do it, and then we can literally skip those areas so that we can just dive right into the book. So what is the consensus?
I remember a little bit. It's maybe the description of Israel during like the Babylonian occupation. talking about.
Yeah,
Where
yeah, yeah,
Ray sees, yeah.
yeah. I know Amy was so excited to hear about the whole historical fact because she's just literally historians and she's very interested in history.
Right. So I do remember, but I would never say no when people wants to tell me historical stories. I'm always open to listen.
All right. Okay, so let me just go over some historical fact against just to kind of refresh your mind of what it is. In order for us to start to go over the historical fact, we need to really understand from Lydian history. Let me see if I can actually find some drawing if I can. Just give me 1 second. Let me see if I have something to share here. Let me see if there's a diagram. Before I do this, let me just pause for a moment. So it's today's world. It is Turkey right here, but it used to be Lydia, and in Lydia, the first kings, the dynasty in Lydia was the Hercules, as you know. The Hercules is that you heard from the myth from the Greek, and Hercules dynasty existed there. And out of the Hercules, the dynasty, there is a king called Candalus. Candalus was a king from the Hercules, and he had a beautiful wife, amazingly beautiful wife, and he always adored her wife and beauty over her wife, his wife. So one day, he was actually just talking to his bodyguard, Gyges, and he was explaining how beautiful his wife it is. He just wanted just to kind of boast about how beautiful his wife is. And he said, Gyges, you don't understand how beautiful my wife is. You have to see how beautiful. And Gyges said, Lord, I do know your wife is beautiful. Your queen is so beautiful, I know. But you don't understand. Just seeing my wife from the palace is not what you really see. You really have to see my wife naked. And Gyges said, Lord, what are you saying? I can never see. Please don't even say it. And said, Kandala said, listen, I'm going to let you see the beauty of my wife. Tonight, I want you to come to my bed in darkness. And I'm going to just tell you when to come in and stay in the closet. And when she comes to bed, she take off her clothes. And before she comes to my bed, you will see her beauty, the real beauty. And said, Gyges said, Lord, I cannot do that. And Kandala said, I'm not telling you to just come. I'm ordering you come. So Gyges has no power to say no to the king. So at night, he actually walked to the king's bed and hid in the closet. And as queen comes to the bed, and as the king said, she took off her clothes. And as she was taking off clothes, Gyges saw her beauty for the first time. And she, as he was watching the queen is taking off her clothes, literally he just blinded by her beauty. And while he was Gyges watching the queens naked, he lost the chance to get out of the room because he just like he was staring at the queens for too long. It just looked so beautiful. And then he lost the chance to walk out of that closet. And then while he realized that he needed to really walk out of the closet, it was too late. And as he was walking out, the queen saw Gaijis walking out. And she was so shameful that someone else actually saw her nakedness. So the queen did not say anything to the king because she knew this is something that king did it. So the following day, the queen called Gaijis. Obviously, Gaijis did not know that queen has seen him walking out the bedroom. So Gaijis just called into a queen, and this is something happened all the time. The queen is calling Gaijis. So the Gaijis came to the queen and said, Lord, is there something I can do for you? And the queen said, I'm going to give you two choices. What choices, Lord? No one in the world can see my naked body. I cannot have two men seeing my naked body in this world. So therefore, your choice is either you kill my husband and then you make me as a queen, or you die for your Lord. You have two choices. Gaiji said, Oh, queen, please don't do this to me. I said, you only have a two choice. You either kill my husband or you kill yourself, or you'll be killed by me. So Gaijis asked for the third options. Please give me a different options. I said, nope, you don't have any other options. Gaijis literally didn't want to kill his lord, but at the same time, he didn't want to get killed. So his option was, I don't want to die. So then, okay, if that's what you want, I will tell you what to do, the queen said. And the queen said, tonight, I want you to come to our bed just like what you did yesterday. Hide in the closet, and when we actually turn to bed, you come and kill my husband. So Gaijis did it exactly what the queen said. Queen walked into the closet that night and killed his lord Kandalus. And then, all of a sudden, obviously the people of Lydia was shocked that the Kandala was killed. And the queen said, well, we're going to have to select the king, and Gaijis will be the king. And obviously the people of Lydia could not accept that. And said, if Delphi Oracle says Gaijis will be the king, we will accept it. Otherwise, we cannot accept him as a king. But obviously, Queen already sent a message to the Delphi oracles and say, if someone comes from our country, you say what I tell you to say. So literally, the Delphi oracle told the people that Gaijis was selected as a king. So obviously everything was a plan, and when she came back, when she received the message from the Delphi oracles, and all the people of Lydia accepted Gaijis to be the king of Lydia. So the dynasty from Hercules ended at the story of Kandalus. I don't know if you actually have you ever watched a movie, the English Patient? Have you watched the English Patient? It's kind of old movies, but no. All right. If you ever watch the English Patient, the actors, the Catherine in the movie, actually tells this story to the people. This exact story that I just told you in the movie. So if you actually didn't really pay attention to her story, you don't remember. But if you actually watch the movie and pay attention to what the story she was giving, this Kandala's story, you will hear the exactly same story that I'm just telling you. So if you want to rewind that movie again, watch the English Patient, you will hear the same story. All right. So why am I actually going through this the story of Lydian King? It's important for you to understand Lydian King history because let me see if I can find another chart. Let me see. Just 1 second. Not this. Okay, so let me just share the screen. Do you see the chart here?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Gaiji's. Obviously, there's another dynasty right next to it. But now, after Gaiji's became a king, now this is the different line of the kings of Lydia. So the Gaiji's that I just told you about became a king of Lydia, and then his descendants, Ardis and the Sadyati, and then there is Aliates, and then Alates had a woman, Carian noble woman, and between Aliates and the Carian noble woman, out of that there is a one son and one daughter came out. This is the king Croesus, which is the very important king of Lydia. And the reason that I'm trying to explain the Kandalas and Gaiji story is because I want you to understand how Gaijis became a king, and then the descendants of a Gaijis, how and the Croesus became a king, and Aryanes, which is the sister of Croesus. This the princess married to the Median dynasty Astyages. Astyages is a very, very important person in the Median history. So this relationship, these three people's story is very important. So Croesus and Aryanes, which is the sister of Croesus, married to the Median dynasty Astyages. Astyages is the grandfather of Cyrus the Great. And now I'm going to give you a little bit of a story of the Cyrus the Great. Astyages married to the Aryanes, and he had a daughter, Mandane. Mandane was a daughter of Astyages, and Astyages had a dream. A dream that what he had was her daughter, Mandane, was just having some sort of like she peed, but her daughter's pee was covering the entire area. It was a so strange dream. So he actually called out his man and said, "What does this dream means? Interpret what this means." And his man said, I think from someone from your daughters that she will govern this area. I said, "That cannot happen. That cannot happen. It has to be from my son, not from my daughter." So what he did was he actually just sent his daughter married to the king of Persia. King of Persia at the time was a very, very small country that nobody cares about. We remember as a Persia as a very, very big country, but back then it was not. So let me show you what the Persia looked like. Let me see if I have a map here. Do I have a map? Okay. So this is not exactly the map that I want, but just to show you. So this Media is the big country. Persia was small country like this, like this small. Persia was a very, very small countries. So you see this Anshan? So Astyages sent his daughter and married to the prince of Ansan, which is a small country. It's like a suburban country that nobody cares about back then. Because Astyages did not want to have her daughter and his line to become a king or succeed his kingship. So he was thinking that sending her to Persian kingdom will never actually bother his kingdom. And later on, he had another dream. And he dreamed that there was some vine came out of his daughter Mandane and literally covered the entire area of Media. And it's like, what is this? So he called this man again and said, interpret what this means. And the man said, "Oh, king, it seems like your daughter Mandane have a son already, and then look like he will be the king of this area." I said, "What? That cannot happen." So actually, Astyages planned to bring her daughter back into Media. So he called his daughter into the Media and he said, "Oh, my daughter, you should have your son in this place." So his plan was literally when she has a son, then Astyages was going to kill his grandson. So finally, day has come that Mandane deliver a son, the baby son. When the baby son was delivered, obviously back then was obvious the mother is in pain. So she could not really think anything. So what happened was Astyages ordered his man, Harpagus, take this son and kill it. And the woman who actually delivered the baby saw the baby, but since they took the baby, and the king told her and said, when Mandane wakes up, tell her your son is dead. And then literally he gave his son over to Harpagus. Harpagus took his Mandane's sons and took it home. And it was just a little baby. So Harpagus didn't want to kill the baby. So what he did was he actually gave the baby over to the shepherd, and then say, take care of this son. Kill it. The shepherd of Harpagus took the baby, and that night, the Harpagus shepherd, his wife, was also had a baby. But when the baby came out, the shepherd's wife delivered the baby was dead. So when the shepherd took the baby of a Mandane, took home, shepherd's wife was delighted. Our son is dead. Why can't we actually just take this baby and raise this baby? So shepherd and his wife decided to raise the baby instead of their dead baby. So time goes on. So literally the boy grew up under the shepherd's guard. And literally you cannot really just hide, he's prestigious. And one day the boy was actually playing with the kids in the town. And then he really liked to play as a king. And while he was playing with the little kids, there was one boy was, the son from the high officials of the government. And the Cyrus was playing as a king, and literally he ordered the boy to do certain things, and the boy from the high official said, I don't want to hear you ordering me. And Cyrus was upset, and he was pissed off, and then literally Cyrus whipped him. And then obviously when the boy of the high official went back home, he complained to his father that the little boy whipped him. And obviously the high official was mad. And then whole story just went into the people of the palace. And even king heard about it. And the king said, who is this little boy did this to you, your son? I want to see. So Astyages actually called the boy up to the palace. When the boy, the Cyrus, walked into the palace, Astyages realized that the boy looked like Mandane. And he was curious. Harpagus, come. Years ago, I told you to kill my grandson. Did you kill my grandson? And he was trembled. King, I did not personally kill your grandson, but I order my servant to kill the grandson. So then call him in. So Harpagus and Astyages called the shepherd. And obviously, shepherd was trembled as well before the king. You tell me, did you kill the baby? If you lie to me, you will be killed. And obviously, the shepherd told the story that he did not kill the baby. Harpagus obviously did not know that shepherd did not kill. So neither Astyages or the Harpagus knew the boy was alive. And obviously, Mandane heard the news that his son is alive. So she came all the way from Ansan and took the boy to Persia. And Astyages was pissed off. Even though he didn't kill the Cyrus, he was pissed off. So one day what he did was he invited the Harpagus over to a dinner. And he asked Harpagus, send your son before you come. So Harpagus had a 13-year-old son, and he sent his son to the palace before he comes to dinner. And obviously, Astyages did not say anything to Harpagus. And when the time comes, the dinner time came, and Harpagus showed up at the dinner. And he had a big plate in front of it. And he opened it. Looks very delicious and looks very good. And Astyages, enjoy your food. And then while he was eating, he found his son's head and his body in his food. So literally, Astyages made Harpagus' son as a dinner. Obviously, Harpagus was so shocked. But obviously, what is he going to do to the king? He could not rebel to the king. But obviously, he was mad. He was mad. His son was killed. From that day on, Astyages did not kill Harpagus, but Harpagus was so mad to the king. And at the same time, people heard about this news. So people of Media was literally turned their back on their king because it was so cruel for what he did. So from that day, obviously, Harpagus was quiet, but at the same time, he started to plan to rebel against his own king. While Cyrus was growing well, now he truly identified himself as a king. He didn't know he was a king before. I mean, he was a prince before, but now he realized that he's the prince of Media. Well, now actually he is a king of Persia, obviously. So what he did was he really grew up like a prince. He was a strong man, and he was a very brave, and he was a very, very smart. So what he did was, one night, he called all the young men of Persia and then come to the palace. And he said, I want you to work all day for me. So all the young men who brought to the palace went out to the field. They worked like a dog. And then evening hour when they came back to the palace, he said, tomorrow, I want you to come back to the palace again. But this time, I want you to dress up nicely and bring your woman to the party. So the following day, all the young men dressed up nicely, and they actually brought their girlfriends to the party. And Cyrus actually literally just, gave them banquets. And they enjoyed the drinks, they enjoyed the meats, they just enjoyed such a good time. And Cyrus said to all the young men, and said, how did you like it yesterday when you worked on the field all day long like a dog? The all young men said, we hated it. And Cyrus said, how about today? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the food? And did you enjoy all the parties we were having? I said, of course we do. And Cyrus said, if you're with me to take over the Media, you will be living like a prince like today. Or if we don't, you will be living like a dog like you lived yesterday. What would you like? Obviously, all the young men said and shouted, we want to live like a princess. We want to live like a prince. Everyone shouted. And that night, Cyrus said, let's go. And he actually packed up with everybody. And obviously, Harpagus was already sent a lots of a message to build up all this plan with Cyrus. And then Cyrus was going after the Media, which is grandfather's land. And Astyages heard the news that Cyrus is coming on his way to his palace. So Astyages said, he called Harpagus. Harpagus, I want you to bring all my armies and fight against Cyrus. And he said, yes, Lord, I will. And he actually gathered all his armies of Media and going to meet Cyrus. And on the night that he was way over to meet Cyrus, he called all the generals of the Media and then said to everyone, listen, I'm not going my way to fight against Cyrus tonight. I am going to work with Cyrus to actually make this country free from Astyages. Are you with me? And all the generals of Media agreed with Harpagus, because Harpagus already been working with all this general and literally made them as their man. And instead of fighting against the Cyrus, entire army of Media joined together with the Cyrus and his army, and then literally came all the way to city of Susa, and literally took over the Astyages kingdom that night. And obviously you could understand how this small country of Persia took over the entire land of Media. That's exactly what happened to Media. Literally, Cyrus come all the way from Ansan to Susa to take over this land because Harpagus and his army joined together with the Cyrus. Literally, it was so piece of cake for Cyrus to take over the kingdom of his grandfather Astyages. And obviously, Cyrus did not kill his grandfather. From that day on, he stepped down as a king, and Cyrus became the king, and Cyrus took good care of his grandfather. But obviously, he lost all his kingdom. So, obviously, everyone around this area heard the news. Lydian heard the news, Babylonian heard the news, and it was a big news. Imagine this, as you can see on this map, this Media is big country. This is the biggest land, right? So everyone was so surprised to hear the big news about what happened to Cyrus. And King Croesus, which I mentioned before, from the king of Lydia, which is literally, when you think about it, Croesus, literally, Cyrus's relative, when you think about it, because Mandane, right? Mandane was a daughter of, so Cyrus's grandmother's brother is Croesus. So when the Lydia kings Croesus heard the news, who is this? The guy Cyrus took over the entire land of Media. So what Croesus did, he sent a man over to Delphi oracles and said, what do you think about this Cyrus? If I have a war with them, what would happen? And the Delphi oracle said, well, king, one of the big kingdom will fall. And literally, Croesus heard that, oh, I see, the big kingdom, Media, will fall when I have a war with Cyrus. So he thought that he's going to win the battle. So he actually came out and he said, I'm going to show him, or I'm going to teach him about the war. So he had a war against Cyrus. While he was actually having a war with Cyrus, Cyrus has sent all his troops to fight against the Lydians. And Croesus realized how strong the Cyrus men are. So they pull back. So they pulled back to his own city. Let me go back to that map again. Let me see if I can go back to the map. Daniel. Yeah, right here. So this is the media, and then they had a war in this area, and then when Croesus pulled back, and he came back to the city, Sardis. Sardis was the capital of Lydia back then. So when he pulled back, he didn't think that Cyrus was going to chase after him. And when Croesus came back to Sardis, he sent a message to Babylonians, Egyptians, and some of the surrounding countries to back him up. But Cyrus knew his plan, the Croesus plan. So literally Cyrus just came after Croesus, came all the way to Sardis. So initial plan of Croesus was to really just waiting for his the ally to come and assist him, but he did not expect the Cyrus to come all the way to Sardis. And when he saw the Cyrus and his armies came through the land, only 14 days it took for the Cyrus to took down the Sardis. And obviously Eli did not arrive on time. So Croesus was captured. And Cyrus was literally just to pile up all the wood and put Croesus on the staff. Then he said, Cyrus said to Croesus, "How dare you that you actually fight against me?" So Croesus was not even showing his fearness to Cyrus. "Kill me." And Cyrus said, "If you bow down to me, I will spare your life." The Croesus said, "Nope, I will not bow down to you." So Cyrus said, "Burn him." So they put the fire on the wood. Cyrus thought that Croesus is going to bow down when he sees the fire. But Croesus did not bow down to him. And he was a touch how brave he was. And then he ordered the fire to be put off. And then obviously Croesus saw what Cyrus did. And Cyrus, after he actually spared his life, Croesus became one of the important advisor of Cyrus. They became a friend since then. After that, since he won the battle against Lydia, so you may think that what happened to Delphi's oracle, that the big kingdom will fall. What Croesus did not understand is that Lydia was also a big kingdom. So he thought the Media will fall, but instead his kingdom will fall. And he didn't know that because Delphi oracle did not specifically says which kingdom will fall. It's just the big kingdom will fall. Well, obviously, Croesus believed that big kingdom was a Media and didn't even realize that Lydia kingdom is also big. And obviously, he thought that he's going to win, but instead, he lost his kingdom. So, after Cyrus took over the Lydia kingdom, obviously, news became even bigger. Everyone was shocked. What? Cyrus actually took over the Lydia as well? Not only Media, but also Lydia? Oh my God, who is he? So everyone started talking about Cyrus. And obviously, Babylonians has the big fortress. No one ever dared to even come close to that Babylonian, the fortress. Because Babylonian fortress, there are many, many armies that came to Babylonians to fight against the Babylon, but no one ever break down the wall of the Babylonians fortress, because Babylonian fortress was so big, and at the same time, the way they built the Babylonians, the fortress was Euphrates River is flowing all around the city of Babylonia, and there is a moat, so you can't even come close to the fortress. And fortress is so tall. It's almost, they dug down to almost 30 meters down the ground and built the wall from there and built almost a 15-story buildings, tall. And there's a multiple walls. So there's no one can break into the fortress of Babylon. So as you can see, and if you remember the story from Daniel, Belshazzar, when Cyrus actually came to attack the Babylon, Belshazzar and all the people of Babylon had a party because they never believed that they were actually going to break down the wall of Babylonia. Here's the story. When Cyrus was actually just so confident that he'd be able to actually, take down the Babylonians, he was actually riding 4 pure white horses. He wanted to show off that he is the king of the kings. And then he was riding over the 4 horses. While he was crossing the river of the Euphrates, one of the white horse drowned. Cyrus is so mad and upset. Oh my God, I gotta have 4 pure white horses pulling me, and my horses died because of this river? He was literally pissed off. And then he ordered his people and said, I'm going to tear this Euphrates River going into the Babylon. And he ordered to take down the trees, and then they dug the pathway to split the Euphrates River to go different route. Because people of Media literally just split the water path into multiple different direction. Water was not directly going into the Babylonian city. So what happened was, because the water was to keep, decreasing, and they found the entrance under the water into the city. It was an accident that they found this, because they didn't even know there was a pathway into the city under the water. And when the armies of Cyrus get into the city and to the fortress, no one believed inside of the Babylonian city believed that Cyrus and his army is going to get into the city. That's why they were having parties inside of the palace. But that night, Cyrus and their armies got into the city and then take down the Babylonians. Because on that day, everyone didn't know that Cyrus and his armies could get into the fortress. They drunk. They didn't even pay attention because they think that this city will never be taken down, or the enemies will ever find a way into the city. But they were wrong. So Cyrus literally got into the Babylon and then take down the Babylonian. So now, as you could imagine, Cyrus took down Media, Lydia, and Babylon. Entire area of those area became the Medians. And obviously, because Cyrus has started all his journey from Persia, he actually called this new kingdom as a Persian kingdom. He stopped calling Median. He started to call Persian kingdom. Now, as you can see, this is the historical fact of how it had happened. Now, this is a kind of summary. I actually explained a lot more details when I was going over the book of Daniel, but this is the kind of big summary of exactly the story of how Cyrus the Great became a king and how he took over the Lydia as well as Babylonian Empire. Does that make sense? Do you now remember the historical fact that I went over before? Okay, so this is the quick summary of how the Cyrus became a king. So then why am I actually going through this history? It's because this is a very important thing for us to remember. So let me just to show you a different chart here for a moment. Let me see. Show you different. All right. Do you see this chart? Oops. So this is the kings of a Neo-Babylonian Empire. So obviously we know Nebuchadnezzar. This is probably the most famous king of the Babylon. And obviously the Nebuchadnezzar's father was Nabopolassar. But not many people really remember Nabopolassar, but everyone knows Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar actually ruled the Babylonian Empire. Literally, he's the one who really just made the Babylonian Empire so big and powerful. Nebuchadnezzar have done such a great work, not only just that he took over the big land, but at the same time, he actually started a lot of different things in his own countries and built the laws and policies and procedures and so forth. So that's why he became so famous and until today. So he literally ruled from BC 605 to 562. So let me ask you this. Do you know when the Jerusalem was destroyed? Do you remember what year that Jerusalem was destroyed? Does anyone remember?
586.
Exactly. You're absolutely correct. BC 586. By whom?
Babylon.
By Babylon and by Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is the one who literally just destroyed the city of Jerusalem. And then what happened? So, Nebuchadnezzar did not come to Jerusalem or the Judah only once. He literally is invaded into Judah multiple times. When was the first time he actually came to Judah? Do you remember? First invasions to Judah. Does anyone remember what year that was and what happened that year? That was a BC 606. That was a BC 606. First invasion, and he took the people of Israel and take people as a captives and brought to Babylonia. Who was there? Who became a captive at that time? The first invasion.
Daniel.
Correct. Daniel and his friend, was brought to Babylon as a captive when he came to Judah for the first time. That was BC 606. And then that wasn't the first time. Second time, when he came, let's just turn to Second Chronicle for a moment. Second Chronicle. We're going to read the chapter 36. Second Chronicle chapter 36. We're going to read from verse 5. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, his God. Against him came up Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and bound him to chain to take him to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also carried a part of the vessels of the house of the Lord to Babylon and put them in his place in Babylon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and the abominations that he did, and what was found against him, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. And Jehoiachin, his son, reigned in his place. So, the first time when they came, which was a BC 606, they took who? Jehoiakim, Daniel, and all his friends. Now, reading from verse 9, Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. In the spring of the year, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babylon with the precious vessels of the house of the Lord, and made his brother Zedekiah king over Judah and Jerusalem. This was the second invasions and the exile of Israel people. This happened BC 597, when Nebuchadnezzar came second time and took Jehoiachin. Verse 11, Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord his God. He did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, who spoke from the mouth of the Lord. He also rebelled against the king Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by God. He stiffened his neck and hardened his heart against turning to the Lord and the God of Israel. All the officers and of the priest and the people likewise were exceedingly unfaithful, following all the abominations of the nations, and they pulled the house of the Lord that he had made holy in Jerusalem. The Lord, the God of their fathers, sent persistently to them by his messenger, he had a passion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they kept mocking the messengers of God, despising his word and scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord rose against his people, until there was no remedy. So, now the third time Nebuchadnezzar came down, and when he came down for the third time, then literally not only he took the Zedekiah, but at the same time he destroyed the city of Jerusalem. Let's continue on. Therefore he brought up against them the king of Chaldean, who killed their young man with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion on young man or virgin, old men or aged. He gave them all into his hand, and all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, and the treasure of the house of the Lord, and the treasure of the king, and his princes. All these he brought to Babylon, and they burned the house of God and broke down the wall of Jerusalem and burned all his palace with fire and destroyed all its precious vessel. He took into exile in Babylon those who had escaped from the sword, and they became servant to him and to his sons until the establishment of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbath. All the days that it lay desolate, it kept the Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. So, when Nebuchadnezzar was a king, he came 3 times to Judah to destroy and brought people from Judah over to Babylon and took them as a captive. As you can see here, Nebuchadnezzar, he actually ruled the Babylon from the BC 605 through BC 562, which means it literally happened during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, right? But he did not live long after he actually finished destroying Judah, because that was the last time he came to Judah and Jerusalem. That was a 586. So then Nebuchadnezzar died in BC 562. But look at this, the rest of his sons. So he had 3 sons, literally, right? But when you look at their rule, very short, 562 to 560, 560 to 556, 555 to 539, very short time, right? And then he only ruled 556, only 2 months, and the last king, Belshazzar, ruled between 553 through 539. So when you think about it, it is less than 30 years after Nebuchadnezzar died, the Babylon was destroyed by the Persian. So Neo-Babylonian Empire did not last more than 100 years, less than 100 years. From the time that Nabopolassar ruled and he established the country of Babylon, from until the time it was destroyed, is not even actually 100 years. So the history of a Babylonian empire was very short. And when you look at it, except the Nebuchadnezzar, no one ever ruled as long as the Nebuchadnezzar had ruled. So Nebuchadnezzar was literally the best king of what they had before. And then, after Belshazzar, obviously, as I just explained to you, Cyrus, the king of Persia, literally took down the Babylon, as I explained. So, the way it actually history ends, as you just can see from the Second Chronicle, which is the previous books of Ezra, and you can see how it actually the Jerusalem was destroyed and why they were destroyed. Right? And then, if you actually go to Jeremiah for a second, let's go to Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 25. Jeremiah chapter 25. We're going to read from verse 1. The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, the king of Judah, that was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. which Jeremiah the prophet spoke to all the people of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. For 23 years from the 13th year of Josiah the son of Ammon, the king of Judah, to this day, the word of the Lord has come to me, and I have spoken persistently to you, but you have not listened. You have neither listened nor inclined your ears to hear. Although the Lord persistently sent to you all his servant the prophet, saying, Turn now, every one of you, from his evil way and evil deeds, and dwell upon the land that the Lord has given to you and your fathers from of old and forever. Do not go after other gods to serve and worship them, or provoked me to anger, which the work of your hands. Then I will do you no harm. Yet you have not listened to me, declared the Lord, that you might provoke me to anger with the work of your hands to your own harm. Therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, because you have not obeyed my words, behold, I will send for all the tribes of north, declared the Lord, and for Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and I will bring them against this land and its inhabitants, and against all these surrounding nations. I will devour them to destructions, and make them a horror, a hissing, and everlasting desolations. Moreover, I will banish from them the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride, and the grinding of the millstones and the light of the lamp. This whole land shall become a ruin and a waste, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Then after 70 years are completed, I will punish the king of Babylon and the nations, the land of Chaldean, for their iniquities, declared the Lord, making the land an everlasting waste. I will bring upon that land all the words that I have uttered against it, everything written in this book, which Jeremiah prophesies against all the nations, for many nations and great kings shall make slave even of them. And I will recompense them according to their deeds and the work of their hands. So, what do you see here? God literally told Jeremiah what would happen. And Jeremiah even mentioned, before all this happened, Babylon will come and destroy the Judah because you don't listen to what I have to say through Jeremiah. And the kings, Jehoiakim, Jehoiakim, and Zedekiah, they did not listen to what God said. And literally, as Jeremiah said, God brought the Babylonian, which was Nebuchadnezzar, and 3 times, and took them as a captive. But then, God promised to Jeremiah, after 70 years, I'm going to bring my people back. So this is the important things that we all have to remember. God's plan is not to destroy Israel. Important part is, that's not God's heart. God's heart is not trying to destroy Israel. But why God is doing what he's doing? Literally, God is doing to bring them back. He wants Israel to be back. But because they weren't listening to God, God had to do what he had to do. So therefore, God already gave these prophecies what will happen. And then they saw what happened. And when Nebuchadnezzar came to Jerusalem, obviously he destroyed the temple, he destroyed the city, he took all the people and left garbage in Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar took everything what is good, whether it's a people or articles, whether gold or silver, whatever is good, he took everything over to Babylon. So, land of Jerusalem was a completely desolate and destroyed. But he said, in 70 years, I'm going to bring you back. Now the question is, why 70 years? Why 70 years? Why not 50 years? Why not 40 years? Why not 20 years? Why not 100 years? Why 70 years? And as I mentioned many times, there's a number 7 has significance, meaning 7 is really the perfect number, but at the same time, that's a God's number and the church's number as well, I mentioned. But besides that, there are other important things that we have to remember. Why 70 years? What did he say in 2nd Chronicle? Let's go back to the 2nd Chronicle, 36, verse 21, one more time. To fulfill the word of the Lord by the month of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbath. All the days that it lay desolated kept Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years. This is the big clue why God chose the 70 years. So now I'm going to tell you this. What is the sabbatical years? What is our sabbatical years? Every 7 years is a sabbatical years. Every 7 years, there's a term. And what happens to those the sabbatical years? Let's go to Leviticus for a moment. Leviticus. Leviticus chapter 25. We're going to read from verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, When you come into the land that I give you, the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years you shall sow your field, and for 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of a solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap what grows of itself in your harvest, or gather the grape of your undressed vine. It shall be a year of a solemn rest for the land. The Sabbath of the land shall provide food for you, for yourself and for your male and female slaves, and for your hired workers and the sojourner who lives with you, and for cattle and for the wild animals that are in your land. All its yield shall be for food. So, every 7 years, they call sabbatical years. But before that year comes on the 7th year, they can harvest until the 6th year. What do you do on the 7th year? You don't harvest anything on the sabbatical years. Which means you don't plant anything at the end of 6th year. Right? That means there's nothing to harvest on the sabbatical years. And since you don't do anything, you don't work for the entire year, obviously you don't plant anything on the 7th year either. So what do? 6th year is the last time that you would harvest. 7th year, there's nothing to harvest. And 8th year, there's nothing to harvest because you didn't plant anything on the sabbatical year. So when multiple years, you can't harvest anything. But God promised, I will supply you everything that you need. So every 7th year, you have to let the land to rest. Think about it. How many times the Sabbath comes a week? Once. Is that correct? How many times the Sabbath comes? Every 7th day. Correct? Remember, when God created the whole world from the Genesis, he created everything first day, second day, third day, and fifth day, sixth day, seventh day. What did he do? He rested. Remember that? That's why the seventh day became the Sabbath, resting day. Right? Who decided the seventh day, the rest day? God did. Not a man. God did. So the entire cycle started because the God set that 1 week with the one resting date is a set for everybody. And such that Sabbath comes once a week, sabbatical year comes every 7 years. Remember what I mentioned about 7? Come to my rest. Come to my rest. Remember that? If you don't come to my rest, you will be destroyed. But then, I'm going to tell you, God told Moses to keep this law that I'm giving you at the mountain Sinai. Tell Israel to do this. Now I'm going to ask you this. How many times Israel had kept this sabbatical years? How many times? $100 times? $200 times? Zero. Zero. They never keep this sabbatical years. Why? Why didn't they actually keep this sabbatical years? I want you to think about this for a moment. I want you to put yourself in their shoes for a moment. If you have to rest for the entire year, not doing anything, you have to rest the entire year. Would you do it? You will? I don't think so. I don't think so. Hey, even God. What's that?
I said I could barely rest a day.
You could really rest a day. Imagine. Remember, God actually told Israel, come to gather the manna every day, right? God told them, only gather one homel for yourself, right? Just for your only daily food. You just take it and come home. What did they do? They took it as much as they could, right? They brought as much as they could possibly brought home. But they realized everything that they brought extra, they couldn't eat. What does that mean? Man is very greedy. Men don't like to keep living day by day. We're afraid. We always worry about tomorrow, don't we? So therefore, we plan everything. What might not even happen in the future, but we're already planning for everything. Is there anybody who does not plan for your future? We plan for our future all the time. We save money, we do this, we do that for future. In case if something happens, we have to have something to protect ourselves. Don't we? We all do. We all do. Why do we do that? Because we're nervous. Something might happen to us, so I have something, emergency that I can use. Something I must plan for tomorrow, month, year, and even 10 years from now on, we plan. Right? We worry about the future. That's a man's nature. Not because of us, because that's everyone. That's a human nature that we worry about the future. Because the future is uncertain. We don't know what might happen. So we try to store it up as much as we can to protect ourselves. Therefore, they worry what might happen. So they never kept this sabbatical year. They never kept it. And how many times that sabbatical year comes? Every 7 years, right? So then, what did we read from the Second Chronicle? God said, to fulfill the word of the Lord by mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbath. Therefore, the land never rested, because every year they skipped the sabbatical year. They kept planting something. They've been harvesting everything. Land never rested. You know why? In today's world, in the land that we live in, we don't have minerals in our soil. You know that? We absolutely have no minerals left. You know why? Because we keep pulling the minerals from the soil. Land is never resting. So what do? We put the mineral in there. Soil cannot generate the minerals anymore because we never let the land to rest. And they did it. So, if God is resting the land for 70 years, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means 70 times they never rested the land. Then how long is that? In order for 70 times of a sabbatical years to pass, how many years is that? Come on, this is like simple math. 490 years. 490 years, the land never rested. They supposed to let the land to rest for 70 times during the 490 years. They never did. So what is God doing? God is forcing them, the land, to rest for 70 years. You're not going to touch this land for 70 years, as I told you to rest this land. And when the 70 years comes, I will let the people come back here. This is why the 70 years came about. Now, as you can see here, when Babylon came to Jerusalem and destroyed the Jerusalem and the temple, right? And then what happened? God said, I'm going to bring back my own people. And how is he going to do it? Verse 17 again. Therefore he brought up against them the king of Chaldean, who killed their young man and the word in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion on young man or virgin, old man or aged. He gave them all into his hand, and all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, and the treasure of the house of the Lord, and the treasure of the king and of his princes. All this he brought to Babylon, and they burned the house of God, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem, and burned all the palace with fire, and destroyed all its precious vessel. He took into exile in Babylon those who had escaped from sword, and they became servant to him and his sons until the establishment of the kingdom of Persia. Until when? Until the establishment of kingdom of Persia. So, what is God doing? God is waiting for the Cyrus to show up. Then, let's take a look. This time, let's go to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 44. Isaiah chapter 44. We're going to read from verse 24. Thus says the Lord your Redeemer, who formed you from the womb. I am the Lord who made all things, who alone stretched out the heavens, who spread out the earth by myself, who frustrates the signs of a liar and makes fools of diviners, who turns wise men back and make their knowledge foolish, who confirms the word of his servant and fulfills in counsel of his messenger, who says of Jerusalem, she shall be inhabited, and of the city of Judah they shall be built, and I will raise up their ruins. Who says to the deep, be dry, I will dry up your rivers. Who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and he shall fulfill all my purpose, saying of Jerusalem, she shall be built, and of the temple your foundation shall be laid. Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have grasped, subdue nations before him, and to loose the belt of kings, to open doors before him, that gate might be closed. I will go before you, and level the exalted place. I will break in pieces the door of bronze, and cut through the bars of iron. He's talking about the fortress of Babylon. I will give you the treasure of darkness and the hoards of the secret place, that you may know that it is I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who called you by your name, for the sake of my servant Jacob and Israel, my chosen. I called you by your name. I named you, though you do not know me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Besides me, there is no God. I equipped you, though you do not know me. The people may know from the rising of the suns from the west, and that there is none besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I form the light and create darkness. I made well-being and create calamities. I am the Lord who does all these things. Remember, who said this? Isaiah. Isaiah said this. When did actually Isaiah lived? When did this actually prophecy came? Do you know?
It was before Cyrus even showed up on the scene.
This was prophesied at least 150 years before the Cyrus was born. 150 years before. Who gave the name Cyrus? Remember, Cyrus' name was given by the shepherd. Remember? When the shepherd actually spared Astyages, the grandsons. Shepherd's wife's name was Cuno. Cuno means wolf. Back then in ancient day, wolf seems to be a very cute name. Seriously. That's why they named the Cuno. Oh, cute. You're like wolf. So cute. Kyrus, which is Cyrus, same thing. Same thing. The Cuno named Cyrus. But according to the Bible, I gave you that name, Cyrus. 150 years before he was born. God told through Isaiah, Cyrus will be born. I chose him. He is my shepherd. I will use you. You don't know me, but I know you. Because I formed you, I stewed you up. Not Astiges, not Harpagus, not the shepherd. It was me who formed you. And you are there to do what I plan to do, to release my own people from Babylonian. 150 years later, this was fulfilled. Now coming back. Not only God said through Isaiah and Jeremiah, this was all planned. This was already prophesied way before this happened. So many people didn't believe that this was prophesied way before God said. But God was always planned things, and He already informed us this will happen. This is the kind of side story. We have seen this kind of prophecies in being fulfilled over and over and over throughout the Bible. This is how we believe when the end time comes, whatever is written in the book of Revelations will be fulfilled the way He said will be fulfilled. Because we have seen this over and over and over and repeated multiple times in the Bible. And we have seen this in history. So, coming back to Ezra, let's take a look at right before the Ezra, 2 Chronicle chapter 36. We're going to read from verse 22 and 23. Now, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and also put it in writing. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and He has charged me to build Him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whoever is among you of all His people, may the Lord his God be with him. Let him go up. Now, what do you think of this? Doesn't he sound like a prophet? Doesn't he sound like prophet? He talks like a God's man, doesn't he? God called him. And he's doing what he's doing to really just tell people to go back and rebuild the temple. And of course, Cyrus was very, very intelligent, and he was a very wise man. When Cyrus actually destroyed the Babylon, Babylonian did not accept Cyrus as an invader. Instead, Babylonian welcomed Cyrus and the Persians to come into Babylonian Empire. They welcomed. What happened? Because Belshazzar was so hard on his own people and destroyed all the customs of the Babylonians. Therefore, what did Cyrus was actually, when I come to Babylon and when I rule the Babylonian Empire, I will not do what your king had done, but instead I will restore all your God. Let you guys to worship your own God, and at the same time, I will restore all the customs of Babylon. So what Cyrus did was he used appeasement policy. He ruled with the appeasement policy to making sure, instead of harsh on the people he took over, he literally just to give them more freedom to do what they wanted. So Babylonians and all the kingdoms that Cyrus took over literally took Cyrus as a liberator, not an invader. Everyone welcomed, just like the Alexander did. Everyone thought Cyrus was the better king than what they used to worship their own king. Same thing, Cyrus respected their religion, their customs, their life, instead of Assyrian did. When Assyrian invaded into their, to other land, they destroyed all the people. They actually moved the people from this land to over, different land, and destroyed every god and temple that they had. So everyone hated Assyrian. But Cyrus didn't do that. And everything what Cyrus did to the place where he conquered, everyone liked Cyrus. Everyone wanted to really just worship the Cyrus because of his own policy. And at the same time, he did the same to the people of Judah. I will free you. Go back to your own land. God told me to rebuild the temple. I will supply all the materials. I will give you the money to rebuild the temple. What do you think the people will take it? They were so joyful, happy. But now, here's the question. Remember, through Jeremiah, what did God say? I will restore you in 70 years. Correct? He said, I'm going to bring you back in 70 years. Now, I'm going to tell you, or think about this for a moment. What year that Israel was destroyed? 586. 586. Now, when did Cyrus free Israel? Well, this is something that most people don't remember. Cyrus let the Israelite go back to his own land in BC 536. So then, let's do some simple math. 586 minus 536. How many years is that? It's 50 years. Well, is that correct? What did God say to Jeremiah? 70 years. What happened? Isn't that supposed to be 70 years? Not 60 years, no, 50 years. As a matter of fact, it's not even a 536. 536 is the year that Israel came back to Israel. Which means when Cyrus announced this, this was 538. So that means it's only 48 years. So then, we're now actually have trouble here. Wait a second. God said to Jeremiah that I'm going to bring back my own people 70 years. Let the land to rest for 70 years. But what happened? It's only 48 years, not 70 years. What happened? for that, I have prepared something for you guys. Always try to entertain everybody. All right, here's the chart that I put together. Now, I showed you before, when did this Nebuchadnezzar came to Judah? I told you that BC 606, right? Second time he came, 597. Third time when they came to destroy the Jerusalem, 586. Right? And then Cyrus the Great became a king of Persia, and when he announced that the Israel to go back to their land to rebuild the temple, that was 538. Right? And the time when the people of Israel came back to Jerusalem, that was 536. Now, we're going to do some simple math again. Now, I want you to do the math from the time when Nebuchadnezzar came to Judah for the first time and took the captives to Babylon. That was a BC 606. And then the time when they came back to Jerusalem, 536. I want you to do the math. 606 minus 536. How many years? 70 years. That's the 70 years. And another way of doing the math, from the time of when Jerusalem was destroyed, which was back in BC 586, the time when Israel rebuilt the temple, that was the year of BC 516. Now, do another math. 586 minus 516. How many years? 70 years. Do you see why the 70 years? It's not 48 years. Many people get confused because they see the calculation from the time when the fall of Jerusalem to the time when they came back, which does not make any sense because that's only 48 years, or even 50 years, because year they came back to Jerusalem was a 536. They see it as a 50 years, not as a 70 years. But their calculation was wrong because they did not calculate it from the time when Nebuchadnezzar came to Israel for the first time. And they don't remember the time when the fall of Jerusalem, when the temple was destroyed, the time when the temple was rebuilt, which is a 516, which make up 70 perfect years, as God said to Jeremiah. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So today, I literally went over kind of preview of Ezra. I haven't even got into Ezra yet, but today was a kind of historical fact and give you some background of the story of how the Ezra started. So I hope you have a good understanding of the historical fact and years and exactly who is Nebuchadnezzar, who is the Cyrus, and what happened during that time. And with that good understanding, starting next week, I'm going to go and dive into the book of Ezra. Any question?